Welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast, the show for people who want to live sustainably without the global overwhelm. We're here to lighten your environmental load. We celebrate local sustainability across Australia and connect you to the solutions and people already doing great things for a healthier planet. Living sustainably starts with good humans like you, people who care about the natural environment, our communities, and the everyday spaces we live in. Each conversation helps you feel reassured that living lighter on the planet is achievable and genuinely feels good to be a part of. From the lands of the Awabakal and Worimi people in Newcastle, Australia, join me, Marty Lee, as we explore how to consume less, build stronger community connections, and thrive in your neighbourhood, wherever you call home. Welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast. Hello, my name's Marty Lee and welcome to the ReNewy Living Podcast. In this episode, we delve into the personal, social and cultural history of a modern problem, which is getting rid of household waste. Joining me to share their perspectives across the generations are my own family, my mum, Leonie Grimshaw, and my sister, Tara Wells. As family, they share a history of their formative or family raising years in Sydney. Together, they recall stories of household rubbish, recycling and food waste, and their understanding of how these systems have changed over the decades gives us a personalised insight into our modern waste crisis. We also touch on how we can use this history to reduce our own waste and become more conscious of our consumption. Let's hear their stories. G'day, Leonie.
Hello, Marty. I just want to tell you that I was born in 1950. So growing up was the 50s and the 60s.
And g'day, Tara.
Hi, Marty. I know we have a very similar voice, but my perspective is coming from someone who was born in the late 70s, was a child all through the 80s and teenager of the 90s, which meant I became responsible for my household waste from the early 2000s.
Now, I would like you both to reflect on your own memories of waste, and we'll start with what happens out the front of your house, the garbage bins. At the moment, in our house, we've got 3 large garbage bins. We've got the red-lidded general waste, the recycling bin, as well as the green waste. Go back in time. What did it look like for you?
Well, Marty, it was a tin bin. It was probably about 1 metre high, and it went out once a week, and it contained all of our rubbish for a family of 4 when I was growing up. It was lined with newspaper, and everything that we put in it was wrapped in newspaper. And I imagine that my mum cleaned it out with disinfectant every now and again.
What decade are we talking about here, Leonie?
We're talking about the 50s and the 60s, Marty.
And even though I was a child coming up through the 80s, I would say it was a similar situation for our family. That is, we had a tin bin throughout most of the 80s, but we also had an inside bin. And when we were talking earlier, Mum, you couldn't remember an inside bin when you were a child?
No, I can't remember an inside bin at all. But what I do remember is that we, like many people in the suburb where we live, had an incinerator. Ours was a Besser Blocker incinerator, and we burned anything that was burnable in the incinerator, not every day, but, when the need arose.
What kind of things were burnable? Does that mean like everything that you had and you used?
No, just paper. I just sort of paper products, because there were no plastic products except for your school drink bottle, which took you all the way through primary school.
Was there a certain day that you did the incineration?
No, just when it needed to be done. But you always knew when other people were doing it because you could smell it.
You smell it, and would sort of impact upon people's washing
The
out
washing day,
line?
I imagine so. In fact, ours was right near the clothesline. That's a good point, Marty.
And what about you, Tara? Do you remember incineration?
I do remember the incinerator being down the back of the backyard. I've spoken to other families who might have had Greek or Italian families, and they said their parents, who might have been first-generation immigrants, dug a hole in the backyard and buried some of the waste. But definitely for our family, it was the incinerator through the 80s. It was a rare occasion, And I remember the change from the tin can, which you had Mum all through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and then same for me into the 80s, until finally the council introduced the big wheelie plastic bin. What do you remember about that?
It was monster big and it had a lid that would never stay up. And then they brought in, we'll give you this great big solid heavy plastic tub and you can put in cans and bottles and papers. Fine. Heavy to lift up, heavy to carry out to the front. And what a mess if it rained before they picked it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember those moments as well, Tara, is particularly that transition from the tin can garbage bin on the street to getting these massive garbage bins on wheels. How amazing was that? We were holidaying up at Central Coast when we were younger, and there were two different sorts of bins, the one that we had in Sydney and the one in Central Coast. One of them was more rectangular like we see today, and the other one was round. And the round one is the one that Leonie is talking about, where the lid didn't have a flip over lid. You just had to sort of navigate the lid whilst putting the rubbish in as well.
Exactly.
And did that feel phenomenal, that change from going to this small tin can bin into like this really large bin on wheels?
Yes, it did, Marty. And because I never felt that our bin was overflowing when it was the small tin bin, I felt even more we're putting this huge thing out and there's hardly anything in it. And it was hard to store because of its shape. And I don't think we had a green waste bin, and if you wanted to put leaves or garden things in, you had to sort of put a rake or something in it or a stick to try and hold the lid up while you used it. It was a bit tricky.
And now we have the 3-bin system, which seems to be common across many councils, the green bin, the yellow lidded bin for recycling, and the red bin for rubbish. But in my council area, we've also got the soft plastics. So my children, I've got 3 boys, they grew up knowing about sorting rubbish from always. But still they'll put something in the wrong bin. And I can't tell you how many times in my house I pull something out of the bin and I say, name the child. I'm like, what is this made of? Plastic? And is it soft? Yes. So what bin does it go in? The soft plastic? Yes, please put it in the soft plastic. So it's just a new generation of arguing about rubbish, really.
Did you have any of those kind of decisions you needed to make when you were younger about which things went into what bin and the complexities of it? What about your food scraps? What happened to those?
Scraps. Well, we never argued about what went into the bin because there was only one. Now, food scraps, there were, I can't even remember food scraps. If you had a leg of lamb and you had a dog, Yummo said the dog. And if you didn't have a dog, the next door's dog loved it too, loved it as well. If there was anything left over, your mother or you would put it into a glass dish and you would put a plastic, it looked like a shower cap. It wasn't, it was special. And you put it in the fridge. And I don't remember buying so much food that you couldn't consume it. And I don't remember waste. We were brought up with the waste not, want not. And so you ate everything on your plate.
So by the 80s, I remember we had occasionally packets of biscuits in the house or packets of 2-minute noodles. I remember when they came in, they all seemed very special because we were from Mum made a lot of stuff herself. What, did you have packets of biscuits when you were little, Mum?
My first memory of biscuits was going to, I think it was called the delicatessen, and they had big tin boxes of biscuits and with a hinged lid, and they would take the biscuits out, put a paper bag on the scales and scoop the biscuits into the paper bag. So that went on for quite some time. And when things like chocolate Monty and like Sayos and Jats, we would buy them, but not in huge quantities because my mum always was baking, practically every Saturday, baking cakes and slices, which you always took to school, wrapped up in greaseproof in a paper bag.
When you brought the biscuits back home and you had that paper bag, is that something that would go into the incinerator out the back and bye-bye, never see that again?
Yes, we burn paper If you didn't reuse the bag, you would burn it. But we had the Sydney Morning Herald delivered daily, and it was thick and huge in those days. So there was an excess of newspaper in our house. So that's when I said the bin was lined with newspaper. Things were wrapped in the newspaper. And we kids made some money by unwrapping the newspapers, flattening them all out, rolling them up, taking them down to the fruit shop. They would weigh them and they would give us some money because they would use the newspapers to wrap the fruit and vegetables in when they sold it. We thought that was great.
That is good pocket money. It's a bit like when I was younger, my pocket money was like the Alcoa Cash a Can, where you collect all the cans. It's very similar to the return and earn scheme now, but you collect all the cans, take it down to the local depot, which sort of supported the Scouts or the other charity, and then you get a little bit of money for it.
Marty, do you remember, though, the first time the return and earn scheme came back a few years ago, and you've only got this legacy of being a 1980s cash a can kid? So you crushed the cans.
Yes.
Crush. And then you take it to
that.
It was. And then you took it to return and earn and they're like, do not crush this can. We can't give you the money.
Yeah, because like Mum getting money from the newspapers, that getting money from the cans was important, but there was the way you crushed it back in the 80s determined how many cans could go back in the bag. So I was always impressed with my dad's 1 foot crush.
Oh, yes. I was
and
more
then mine
of
was the threefold.
Three in the middle and then
the
end
side,
and then.
the side.
And if you were lucky or unlucky, sometimes it's stuck to the bottom of your shoe and you can do a little tap dance with it.
Now, talking about drinks, if you ever found a soft drink bottle when we were up the coast on our holidays and you took it to the little corner shop, they would give you, I think it might have been threepence, which was a huge amount of money, and we'd buy a bag of lollies then.
But what were they doing with the glass bottle?
They were sending them back to rewash and reuse them. And when my dad worked at Schweppes for a short time, I think he bought a case of bitter lemon at Christmas time. And I know that when you had the drinks, you put them back in the box and then they went back to be washed. And some people had soft drinks delivered to their house, and we didn't, but they were very special. And they the company also, when they brought the next delivery, took all the old empties to wash them out.
That's a really interesting point because I remember milk bottles. I don't remember soft drinks when we were growing up, Tara, but I remember milk bottles.
Our family didn't have the soft drinks, but I do know there was a local soft drink manufacturer in our part of Sydney that other families remember. We just never did. But the milk bottles, home delivery of milk bottles definitely went through to the 1990s.
Yes, and that transition, like they would take the empty milk bottles back, and like Mum was saying before about they would reuse those milk bottles, not crush them up and recycle them, but reuse and then put a new foil lid over them when the new milk got in. And then from milk bottles, like then there was that bit of a transition from it coincided with the stopping of the milk delivery truck, as well as then milk ended up to be in paper cartons or cartons as such. And then I can't even remember when the transition to plastic milk bottles came into effect.
I can't either. And you just accepted it, although I did keep a pint and a half-pint glass bottle. And luckily enough, the plastic lids fit on them. So when I have guests in my Airbnb, I fill it up with milk and then wash it out and then put the plastic lid back on and reuse it. That makes me feel good. And it's a talking point too.
Tara, did you have any memories about the PET or the plastic soft drink bottles?
Oh, yes. I only found out later that there was that local soft drink manufacturer where other people of our era were taking the glass bottles to be returned, like the 50s and 60s. They were doing that well into the 90s. But my only memory of soft drink was in the PET bottles or the PET bottles. I'm not sure how they say it, with the black base.
Oh, I had forgotten about the black base.
Yes.
Funny how things morph.
But then it's funny because as an adult or as a young adult and adult, I've travelled to countries that have vastly different waste systems to ours. And in fact, you could say are quite behind Australia. They don't have great sewerage. They don't have great waste collection. And yet they've got glass bottles that are being washed and recycled in a way that feels luxurious to drink a major soft drink label out of this glass bottle. It's something here you would pay a premium for, but for there it's just part of their everyday waste collection. So it's only when you travel can you realise that what we have, there are many different, like travel teaches you, there's many different ways to do things in the world, and ours is not the only way.
What about the volume of waste? Do you feel like the amount of waste progressed over time, particularly like when you reflect back on, yes, we got those brand new wheelie bins that were much, much bigger and you felt like you're putting much less in them. Then do you remember a time where that volume just substantially increased?
I notice other people's bins when you're in the street, and often many of them are overflowing. And I think it's the same thing as the garage. The bigger the garage, the more things you can keep. And I think maybe with the big bin, there's that, we just throw it in the bin, just keep throwing it in the bin. I think it's that sort of thing too. I've noticed that a lot of people who have babies have a lot of nappies. Now, they're disposable, they're handy, they work. When I had children, that wasn't the case. There was no choice. You had cloth nappies and you washed them. Maybe that was another problem, but it did not fill the garbage bin like people who need to buy nappies for their babies does fill the garbage bin.
And I think what you're saying there is there's this real difference between perhaps the amount of waste that's generated to how much time that we have. So to have cloth nappies, there's a lot of time that needs to be dedicated into having cloth nappies. And even all this stuff about trying to reduce our food waste as much as possible, though you've had some really great stories, is that offset of time and waste.
Marty, as you know, my 3 boys, when they were very young, all 3 of them had food intolerances. That meant, for the purpose of this story, that they couldn't eat or drink a single thing out of a packet, that we had to prepare everything from scratch. I don't mean buy a product and add to it. I mean absolutely making everything from scratch. It was a huge burden on our family, obviously. Hugely, hugely time consuming. We also had barely any waste. Now, when their food intolerances were solved and they were able to drink milk out of a carton, bread out of a container, biscuits out of a packet, or even that I could use sauces and condiments, I was so personally relieved at the relief of my time that I went packet crazy. For a few years, I just thought, I have cooked everything from scratch for so many years. I just need some relief from that. Bought so many packets. And that's when I noticed our waste was transformative. It never overflowed the bin. I still don't know how, and we've got 5, we're a family of 5. I still don't know how you would fill a red bin if you're using the other bins, but the amount of waste, it felt criminal. So now now that I've had some respite from those years, we're back to kind of relying on packets less in order to reduce our impact. But the amount of time it takes to not use packets is something that is a big ask for people who also are expected to have jobs and manage a family.
And there also has to be that motivation and knowledge to do that cooking as well. And I'm sure that our cooking styles have changed over time. And like Richard Glover has written a book about the avocado. I can't remember the exact title of that book. And I clearly remember that avocado. I don't remember avocado being on a menu when cafes were becoming a big thing in the early 90s. But I'm sure that maybe the foods and the lunches that you had, Leonie, when you were younger determined what kind of waste was happening in your household compared to our multi-international cuisines that we have these days.
We didn't have all the multi-international cuisines, but I have to say that when the first Chinese restaurant opened in our suburb, children were commissioned to go up to the Chinese on a Friday night while Mum was cooking some meat, and we bought 1 serve of curry prawns and rice, and we took our own Pyrex dish. Well, that's a good idea, isn't it?
Was that common?
Yes. They didn't have takeaway containers. The only problem was when you came home with somebody else's container and your mother sent you back to get the right one, whoops.
But for them, perhaps restaurants were an eating, particularly like Chinese restaurant, which was very fancy. And what are we talking about here? 1960s?
Yes, 1960s. And my cousin lived up the road and she can remember doing the same thing, taking a Pyrex casserole dish to get their one serve of chicken chow mein or something.
Let's move the discussion on to tips. Now, I call it a tip, but these days they're called a waste management facility. And so even the name and the feel of it, if you've been to a modern waste facility, it feels quite sanitized and there's a lot of clear systems and procedures in place. But what are your memories of the tip?
The tip was somewhere you didn't go. Well, our family didn't go. I think my father might have been once or twice, and they said it was very smelly. But I believe they said to dump the whatever you had in your car over there, and then a grader would come and just cover it, move it, cover it, and that was it. It wasn't till much later that they started to sort things.
And it's nearly like my generation needs to rely on your generation, Mum, about where all the tips were. Because when you speak to older residents of any suburb, they'll remember, oh, yeah, that used to be the tip. There wasn't one central tip, was it? There were lots of little ones.
There were lots of little ones. And as it was up, we've noticed that now one tip in our local area up the coast is now a car park for the dog beach. A relative just told me that where they used to go to the tip is now huge playing fields. So, I mean, times have changed. I mean, that is a good thing that they've been filled over, but there's a limit to what we can do with landfill, absolutely.
And the tips are quite localised these days. There's usually one spot within a designated region or a designated shire council area. But when I was doing some research about tips, it seemed like there was like a localised tip in every single suburb that you just go and dump your stuff.
It was in the case. Now there's a tip if you've got e-waste, you can take your e-waste there. And now the council have a day where they collect poisons and paints and that sort of stuff. It's a designated day. And I mean, it's wonderful. And there's always a great queue to get in, which is good.
Speaking of that, I've had to think about how to dispose of x-rays and I had to look it up on the internet.
That's a really hard one.
No, it was great because it said lots of councils have their own, but if they don't, you take it to your local hospital's x-ray department because there's silver in the x-rays that can be recycled. So I was glad I searched it before I threw it in the general waste to know that x-rays is a thing.
And see, that wouldn't have been a thing when you were younger because, I mean, medically and historically, I don't know when x-rays started to become a part of medical life. But that's really interesting because that shows that, we don't have x-rays to take home with us these days. It's all digital.
Yes, when I was a child, if you had an x-ray, oh my gosh. And even then, when I was married up until I don't know how long ago, you kept everything because I was brought up in a family where you repaired things, you kept things, you didn't throw things away. You found another use for them. And having a holiday house was a great idea to bring those things up there and get something for your house. So we kept everything.
And by the time that you became an independent person and married and started to have your own home, you actually needed some furniture. So is this where perhaps the tip came into place?
Well, there was a place in Sydney called Tempe Tip. I think it was well known. I didn't go there, but my new husband went out there and bought a sideboard at the Tempe Tip. He tells me it was like a huge warehouse run by the Salvation Army, had all sorts of furniture, and it must have been located near Tempe Tip. Yeah, it was a great way to get things. And then people gave you secondhand things, or you had bookshelves, which were some bricks with a piece of timber across it. And everybody, you just made do, and you didn't think you needed the newest, the latest. You were just happy with what you had. Many people did that.
Whereas when I was moving out of home, when you moved out of home, it was solid furniture or nothing. Whereas I was moving out of home in the early 2000s when IKEA had come to Australia. So we had flat pack furniture and cheap furniture as a choice. So you didn't have to choose the solid furniture, which was just as expensive now as what it's always been. There was this kind of middle tier that I could choose new, but flat packed, cheaper. What's it called? MDF, modified board.
Yeah, chipboard, MDF, like it depends, but all that kind of stuff. And I see it a lot on bulk waste piles as well, because that's another option on how to get rid of your waste is you can put it out the front or call up your local council. Depends on your council area, what their systems are in place. But often the stuff that goes out on the front lawn is that MDF or chipboard, which can't be reused, is affected by water and everything else. It's got pros to it. So it's easy to transport, particularly when you're renting and you need to move house a lot or you've got tricky spaces. But it is quite problematic.
Yes, the furniture from days gone by did last, and I'm still using a club lounge that I sat on when I was a child. It looks terrific.
And what about bulk waste through the decades? Do you remember that?
No, it was introduced, was it in the 80s or 90s, where the council said, if you put your things out on the street twice a year and they gave you the date, we'll come and collect them. And it was a great thing for people to run around and look at everybody else's bulk waste to see if there was any pickings for them.
But you also had people who were doing it as a semi-business. So they might be metal scrap recyclers, and they would go around to the same area on the day and pick up people's old washing machine tubs and things like that. So to the point that people would knowingly put things out onto the street thinking other people might sort through it and take what was still useful.
Thank you so much for your conversation today. It's really fascinating to hear about the history that you both remember, particularly because when you were growing up, Tara, you were the child of mum in the family and have slightly different memories. What's your one simple tip for reducing waste coming into your home?
Well, because I love cooking and I love eating and I'm very pro natural good food, I think if you plan what you're going to eat, your family, loosely plan, then you don't overbuy. Because in overbuying, even though we have good refrigeration, well, if you don't store it correctly and nothing will last forever, and then you ended up wasting it. So if you plan and think about good food storage, you'll save money and you'll save a lot of landfill.
Planning is a really great tip, but also flexibility in that, because just before the public holiday, where all the shops were closed, the supermarket had major specials, and like they were literally giveaway specials on fresh produce. This is the downside of companies putting fresh foods in plastic packaging, is that they all have to have use by dates, which meant that day that they had to close, they had to clear out all this fresh food. And I got a mozza of food because my concept was I am helping reduce food waste and packaging waste. I'm not going to buy that stuff normally when it's full price, but because it was on clear out special, that is the long way for me to say flexibility within planning is really important, because I wasn't planning to buy that reduced food, but then I ended up planning my meals around that reduced price of food.
Have you had to have a cooking day where you cook it all before it goes off? If you've got 300 red capsicums and you're like, what am I going to do with that?
Capsicum jam. Red capsicum jam's great with cheese.
That sounds really delicious. No, what we did do is we invited lots of friends to come over. So we bought the meat that was on special, but we've enjoyed nearly all of the food. And this is a few days later, and the shops can't sell it if it's after the due by date or the best before date. Sorry, it's the due date, I think it is. So yeah, we've had to have lots of friends around. Why should that be? Yeah, I know that is a plus, isn't it? And it's been really enjoyable. We had one meal that was $9 for the total meal for the three of us. Can't beat that. Tara, what would be your one simple tip for reducing waste coming into your home?
I'm the generation that's been really influenced by the ABC TV program War on Waste, where I think we all learned for the first time that coffee cups are slowly killing us, if not the caffeine habit. So I feel a bit holier than thou when I say take your own coffee cup, because I drink tea. But I think it's proven that we were able to change our behaviour when the supermarkets brought in bring your own bags. And slowly we all learnt, well, just have the bags in the car. You never know when you're going to need it. Can we not do that same behaviour change for coffee cups? Just have a clean spare cup in the car for the times that you know you're just in case you want a coffee and you want to grab one. Can we just do that slow behaviour change to make an impact on the coffee cups?
If I go into the supermarket to buy a small amount, well, that doesn't happen. And I haven't brought all my bags in with me. There's no way I'm taking them out in plastic bags. So I wheel it out to the car and then I just put it in the car in the bag. It is no problem. You've got to wheel the trolley out anyhow.
Yes, or you do the kangaroo kind of thing. You've got your clothes and they go into your clothes.
Oh, yes, I've done all of those things. No, I refuse plastic bags. In fact, people go to pick them up and I go, no bag, thank you.
But it's even got to the point, even with paper bags, that I refuse paper bags because, yes, you can recycle them, but it's better to reuse first. And I have got enough paper bags even at home.
I agree, Marty. I have a drawer full, but I like to use them, reuse them. And we were only talking about maybe the bins get full at Christmas time with paper wrappings. Well, we used to don't tear the things off, fold the paper up, iron it and reuse it. Fancy that.
You have just reminded me of growing up as a teenager and I'm going to birthdays. And
Mum's in the ironing board, ironing the paper, paper out.
The problem is we had so much paper that was like wedding paper from the 1970s or birthday paper. Totally not suitable for a teenage birthday.
That's ridiculous, Marty.
That's all we had.
So my boys have been sometimes careful at unwrapping presents and I'm like, just rip it off. Go for it. Go crazy.
So we're not tainted by this at all, are we?
I'd forgotten about that. We used to iron the...
Make sure that the print was print side down so it didn't get on the iron. Thanks, Leonie.
Thank you, Marty.
Thanks, Tara.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the ReNewy Living Podcast. I hope you're feeling more confident and invigorated about taking a localised approach to living sustainably. Head over to my website, renewyliving.com.au, for this episode's summary and the relevant links. My ask to you is to follow or subscribe to the ReNewy Living Podcast so you can tune in to every episode. And by sharing the episodes you love, it's an easy way to help more people join the conversation about sustainability. I look forward to sharing more stories with you, ones that help lighten your environmental load and feel great to be a part of, so we can build a healthier planet for good. In people and planet kindness, from me, Marty Lee, this is the ReNewy Living Podcast.